In the vast expanse of the Galactic Federation's premier educational institution, the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts (IASA), there was a day that would go down in infamy. A day that would make the annals of Xeno history books, cause countless alien species to question their sanity, and generally wreak havoc on the delicate sensibilities of beings who thought they'd seen it all. It was Bring Your Pet to Class Day. Now, you might think this was a harmless event, designed to foster interspecies understanding and showcase the diverse fauna of the galaxy, and for most species it was. The Flofians brought their sentient clouds of sparkly gas. The Aquarians proudly displayed their bioluminescent water spirits. Even the Rockites managed to coax their pet crystals into putting on a dazzling light show. But then there were the humans. Ah, humans, those bipedal menaces from the death world known as Earth, the species that had clawed its way to the stars through sheer stubbornness and a baffling ability to befriend creatures that, by all rights, should have eaten them eons ago. When the announcement for Bring Your Pet to Class Day reached the human dormitories, the reaction was, well, let's just say it was uniquely human. "Fuck yeah," exclaimed Sarah Johnson, a sophomore studying xenobiology. "I can finally bring Mr. Snuggles." Her roommate Sirksak from the gaseous plains of Nebula Prime wafted nervously. "Sarah, my dear friend, I fear you may have misunderstood the assignment. We are to bring pets, not monstrous abominations from the depths of nightmares." Sarah blinked, her expression a perfect mixture of confusion and amusement. "But Mr. Snuggles is a pet. He's my cat." Sirksak's gaseous form shimmered in what could only be described as a full-body eye roll, if Sirksak had eyes, or a body. "Sarah, your cat, as you call it, is a predator, with claws and teeth that hunts for sport." "Yeah, isn't he adorable?" Sarah cooed, completely missing the point. Meanwhile, in the boys' dorm, Jake Martinez was having a similar conversation with his roommate, a sentient fungal colony named Myco. "Dude, check it out," Jake exclaimed, holding up a leash. "I'm totally bringing Rex to class tomorrow." Myco's spores vibrated in alarm. "Jake, my friend, perhaps we should reconsider. Your Rex is not exactly standard pet material." Jake looked offended. "What are you talking about? Rex is a good boy. Aren't you, Rex?" He turned to the corner of the room where a massive, muscular creature with a square jaw and adorably floppy ears sat, its tail thumping against the floor hard enough to shake the foundations of the building. Rex, the 180-pound Rottweiler, let out a booming woof that sent Myco's spores scattering in terror. "See? He's excited." Jake grinned, completely oblivious to his roommate's distress. As news spread through the human quarters, a mixture of excitement and mischief filled the air. Emily Chen decided to bring her ball python, much to the horror of her Slytherin roommate, who couldn't fathom why anyone would keep a noodle of death as a companion. Carlos Rodriguez opted for his tarantula Fluffy, while Aisha Patel chose her pet rabbit, Thumper, though she neglected to mention Thumper's penchant for chewing through solid steel. The next morning, as students from across the galaxy made their way to the grand auditorium for the pet showcase, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. The non-human students chatted excitedly about their ethereal, harmless, often incorporeal pets. The humans, on the other hand, were suspiciously quiet, many of them carrying large crates or struggling with leashes attached to unseen creatures. Professor Zilblax, a gelatinous being of immense intellect and questionable fashion sense, stood at the podium, his pseudopods quivering with excitement. "Welcome, students, to our first annual Bring Your Pet to Class Day," he burbled enthusiastically. "We'll begin with presentations from Sector A. Gloop Norp, please come forward with your pet luminous mist." A timid nebulate floated to the stage, trailing wisps of glowing fog. "This is Sparkle," Gloop Norp whispered, his voice barely audible. "She enjoys floating and existing." The audience oohed and ahed appropriately as Sparkle did, indeed, continue to exist in a most spectacular fashion. Next up was Zix 427, a robotic entity from the Cybernetic Collective. "This is Unit 8675309 427, intoned monotonously. It excels at complex calculations and occasionally plays soothing dial-up noises." The human section of the audience stifled their laughter, while the rest of the aliens nodded appreciatively at the cutting-edge technology. As the presentations continued, the humans grew increasingly restless. Sarah kept shushing her crate, from which ominous growls emanated. Jake was having trouble keeping Rex from dragging him out of his seat, the massive dog's nose twitching at the myriad alien scents. Finally, Professor Zilblax's pseudopods wiggled in the human direction. "Ah yes, our friends from Earth. Sarah Johnson, why don't you start us off?" Sarah bounded to the stage, her crate meowing indignantly. With a flourish, she opened the door, and out stepped Mr. Snuggles. Now to Sarah, Mr. Snuggles was an adorable fluffball of love and occasional violence. To the rest of the auditorium, he was a sleek killing machine with razor-sharp claws and eyes that promised death. "This is Mr. Snuggles," Sarah announced proudly. "He's a cat. He enjoys napping, chasing laser pointers, and disemboweling small creatures for fun." The auditorium went silent. Then, chaos erupted. The avians, reminded of ancient predators from their homeworld, took to the air in panic. The Redentians fainted in mass. Even the stoic Rockites showed cracks in their usually impassive facades. Mr. Snuggles, for his part, looked utterly unimpressed. He sat down, lifted a leg, and began grooming himself with all the dignity of a creature who knew it was the apex predator in the room. Professor Zilblax's gelatinous form quivered violently. Miss Johnson, he stammered, perhaps it would be best if you contained your pet. Sarah looked confused. But he's not doing anything. Look how cute he is. As if on cue, Mr. Snuggles yawned, displaying a mouthful of needle-sharp teeth. Several more aliens fainted. Next, Professor Zilblax practically shrieked, "Jake Martinez." Jake swaggered onto the stage, barely controlling Rex on his leash. The massive dog's tail wagged with enough force to create a small windstorm. "This is Rex," Jake announced proudly. "He's a Rottweiler. His hobbies include playing fetch, guarding the house, and being a good boy." "Who's a good boy?" "You are." "Yes, you are." Rex, excited by Jake's tone, let out a booming woof that shook the auditorium. The sound wave was enough to destabilize several gaseous beings, causing them to temporarily lose cohesion. Mr. Martinez, Professor Zilblax bubbled weakly. "Your pet seems to be some sort of war beast." Jake laughed. "Nah, he's just a big softy. Watch this." Rex shake. Rex obligingly lifted a massive paw and extended it towards the professor. Zilblax, misunderstanding the gesture, liquefied in terror, certain he was about to be crushed. As Zilblax reconstituted himself, he made a mental note to have a long talk with the admissions department about their screening process for Deathworlders. The presentations continued, each human pet more terrifying than the last to the alien sensibilities. Emily's ball python caused a mass exodus of the Slytherian delegation, who couldn't fathom why anyone would willingly associate with a creature that was basically a mobile stomach with murderous intent. Carlos's tarantula, Fluffy, sparked a diplomatic incident when a member of the Arachnoid Federation accused humans of cultural appropriation. It took several hours and a hastily arranged peace summit to explain that no, humans did not think of spiders as their evolutionary cousins. But it was Aisha's presentation that truly broke the camel's back. Not that any of the aliens knew what a camel was, which was probably for the best. "This is Thumper," Aisha said brightly, holding up a fluffy white rabbit. For a moment, the aliens relaxed. Finally, a normal, harmless pet from the humans. Then Thumper got bored. With a casual flick of his powerful hind legs, Thumper launched himself out of Aisha's arms. He landed on the stage with a soft thump and immediately began to chew through the solid titanium podium. "Oh no, Thumper. We talked about this," Aisha cried, diving to retrieve her pet. But it was too late. The damage was done. The auditorium erupted into chaos once more. Aliens fled in all directions, their terrified shrieks mixing with the confused barks, meows, and hisses of the human pets. Professor Zilblax had given up all pretense of control and was quietly oozing towards the nearest exit. As the dust settled and the last echoes of panic faded, the humans found themselves alone in the auditorium with their pets, surrounded by the debris of what had once been a state-of-the-art learning facility. Sarah, cradling Mr. Snuggles, looked around in confusion. "Was it something we said?" Jake, still struggling to control an overexcited Rex, shrugged. "Beats me. I thought it went pretty well." Emily's ball python, having escaped in the chaos, slithered by with what looked suspiciously like an alien tentacle in its mouth. Emily sighed. "Well, there goes my deposit." As the humans began to clean up the mess and round up their escaped pets, a thought occurred to Carlos. "Hey guys, do you think maybe, just maybe, our pets might be a little intense for the rest of the galaxy?" There was a moment of silence as they all considered this. Then, as one, they burst out laughing. "Nah," they chorused, returning to the task at hand. Meanwhile, in the administrative offices of the Interstellar Academy of Second Arts, an emergency meeting was being held. Dean Xylophone, yes, that was his name, and no, he didn't appreciate the human snickering every time it was mentioned, was trying to maintain order among his staff. It wasn't going well. "Order, order, I say," he trumpeted, his vocal cords vibrating in a way that would have made actual xylophones jealous. "We must discuss the incident at today's pet showcase." Professor Zilblax, still a bit wobbly from his earlier liquefaction, raised a pseudopod. "Dean Xylophone, with all due respect, incident is putting it mildly. It was a catastrophe. A calamity. A cataclysm of interstellar proportions." Now soothed Professor Chlorophyll, a sentient plant from the gardens of Verdana Prime. Surely it wasn't that bad. The humans were just showing their unique cultural practices. "Unique," sputtered Professor Neutronium, a super dense being from a heavy gravity world. "Did you see what that rabbit did to my reinforced chair? I designed that chair to withstand the gravity of a collapsing star." Dean Xylophone sighed, a sound not unlike a glockenspiel being dropped down a flight of stairs. "The question is, what do we do now? We can't very well expel the humans. They're here on a diversity scholarship funded by the Galactic Council themselves." There was a moment of thoughtful silence, broken only by the distant sound of Rex's excited barking as Jake apparently decided that now was a good time for a game of fetch in the quad. Professor Zilblax's form rippled with an idea. "What if What if we created a separate class for the humans? A sort of Deathworlders studies program. The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement and relief. Excellent idea. Zilblak's Dean Gilaphone chimed. We'll create a specialized curriculum for our human students, something that takes into account their unique perspectives and companions. And so the Deathworlder Integration and Xenobiological Harmony program, or DICH pronounced dish much to the humans' amusement, was born. The next day, as the human students filed into their new classroom, reinforced walls, airlocks and all, they were greeted by a holographic projection of Dean Gilaphone. Welcome, students of Earth, to your new specialized program. The Dean's image trumpeted cheerfully. Here, you'll learn to integrate your fascinating cultural practices with galactic society. Your first lesson, why disemboweling is considered rude in 7 out of 9 galactic sectors. The humans exchanged glances, a mixture of confusion and amusement on their faces. Sarah raised her hand. Dean Xylophone, is this because of Mr. Snuggles? Because I swear he only disembowels for fun, not for rudeness. The hologram flickered. Dean Xylophone's expression a mixture of horror and resignation. Yes, Miss Johnson, it's because of Mr. Snuggles, and Rex, and Fluffy, and especially Thumper. As the Dean launched into his lecture, the humans settled in, their pets by their sides. Mr. Snuggles purred contentedly, Rex's tail thumped against the reinforced floor, and somewhere in the ventilation system, Fluffy the tarantula was beginning to build a web that would baffle xenobiologists for generations to come. Just another day at the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts, where humanity's best and brightest and their beloved companions were learning to navigate the complex waters of galactic society, one terrified alien at a time. Months passed, and slowly but surely the DICH program began to yield results. The humans, for their part, made a genuine effort to understand why their perfectly normal pets might be considered walking nightmares by the rest of the galaxy. The aliens, in turn, started to see the human-pet relationship as less of an abomination against nature and more of a fascinating anomaly. Progress was made in small, often hilarious steps. There was the time when Jake, in an attempt to show how gentle Rex could be, organized a Pet the Puppy booth in the quad. It went surprisingly well until Rex got overexcited and licked a crystalline being, accidentally dissolving half their outer shell. In Rex's defense, they did taste like a giant salt lick. Or the incident with Emily's ball python, who, during a class on appropriate dining etiquette across the galaxy, decided that the hovering orb-like professor looked suspiciously like a very large egg and attempted to swallow him whole. It took 3 hours, a tub of alien butter, and a team of engineers to extract the poor professor. But for every setback, there were small victories, like the day Mr. Snuggles curled up on the lap of a trembling Flofian and purred, causing the alien to exclaim in delight, "It vibrates, how charming." But for every setback, there were small victories, like the day Mr. Snuggles curled up on the lap of a trembling Flofian and purred, causing the alien to exclaim in delight, "It vibrates, how charming." The fact that the Flofian passed out from sheer terror moments later was conveniently overlooked. As the semester progressed, the DICH program expanded its curriculum to include such vital courses as No, Your Classmate is Not Emergency Rations, a guide to interspecies dining, the art of not terrifying your alien neighbors, and the particularly popular So You've Accidentally Conquered a Planet, diplomatic solutions for the accidental warlord. The humans, for their part, took to these classes with their typical blend of enthusiasm, sarcasm, and complete disregard for self-preservation. I still don't get it, Sarah mused one day during their Galactic Perceptions of Predators seminar. Mr. Snuggles is literally sleeping 20 hours a day. How is that terrifying? Professor Zilblaks, who had drawn the short straw and was teaching the class, wobbled nervously. Miss Johnson, it's not about what your cat does most of the time. It's about what it's capable of during those other 4 hours. Jake chimed in, but that's the best part. You never know when they'll suddenly decide to go from adorable fluffball to apex predator. It keeps life exciting. The professor's gelatinous form shuddered in what could only be described as a full-body cringe. That is precisely the problem, Mr. Martinez. Most species in the galaxy prefer their excitement to come from less lethal sources. Like what Carlos asked, genuinely curious. Fluffy the tarantula was perched on his shoulder, mandibles clicking in what the humans had learned to recognize as amusement. Well, Zilblaks began, relieved to be on safer ground. The ethereals of the Whisper Nebula find great excitement in watching gases swirl into new patterns. The Chronos species gets their thrills from watching paint dry, something about the fascinating passage of time. The humans exchanged glances, a mixture of disbelief and pity on their faces. Right, Aisha said slowly, absent-mindedly petting Thumper, who was contentedly gnawing on a chunk of depleted uranium. That sounds thrilling. Professor Zilblaks sighed, a sound like air escaping from a particularly sad balloon. The point, students, is that the galaxy is a diverse place. What one species finds exciting, another might find terrifying, or boring, or mildly appetizing. Speaking of appetizing, Emily piped up, her ball python draped around her shoulders like a scaly scarf. Is it true that the gastropods of Slime Prime think Wood 40 is a delicacy? The professor's form rippled in what the humans had learned to recognize as a nod. Indeed, though I'd advise against offering it as a gift. The last diplomatic incident involving lubricants and the gastropods is still being sorted out in galactic court. As the class descended into barely contained laughter and increasingly ridiculous questions about alien dining habits, Professor Zilblox couldn't help but feel a twinge of, was it affection? Sure, these humans and their pets had turned the academy upside down, caused more property damage than a small war, and given half the faculty recurring nightmares. But they were also infuriatingly endearing in their own terrifying way. Meanwhile, in the administrative offices, Dean Xylophone was having a much less pleasant time. He stared at the holographic display before him, his xylophone-like structure vibrating with stress. "You can't be serious," he chimed to the imposing figure on the screen. "The Galactic Council wants to do what?" Ambassador K. Throk, a being composed entirely of pulsating energy and bureaucratic frustration, flickered impatiently. "You heard me, Dean. The Council has decided that the Dix program is a resounding success. They want to expand it. Dramatically." Dean Xylophone's keys clattered in alarm. But we've barely managed to keep this small group from accidentally starting an interstellar incident. How are we supposed to handle more?" The ambassador's energy form pulsed in what might have been a shrug. "The Council believes that the key to true galactic harmony lies in understanding our differences, and apparently nothing highlights those differences quite like humans and their companions. So what exactly are they proposing?" the Dean asked, already dreading the answer. "A full-scale cultural exchange program," K. Throk announced. "We're going to be sending aliens to live with human families on Earth and bringing more humans and their pets to study at academies across the galaxy." There was a moment of silence as Dean Xylophone processed this information. Then, in a move that would have made his human students proud, he said the only thing that seemed appropriate. "Well, fuck." The news of the expanded program spread through the academy like wildfire, or, in the case of the Combustonians, like a particularly juicy piece of kindling. The human students, predictably, were thrilled. "This is going to be awesome," Jake exclaimed, scratching Rex behind the ears. The massive dog's tail wagged so hard it created a small sonic boom. "Just think of all the new friends we'll make." Sarah nodded enthusiastically, Mr. Snuggles purring in her arms. "I can't wait to show everyone back home how amazing alien cultures are. Though, do you think they'll let me bring Mr. Snuggles to other planets? I'm pretty sure he'd love to chase some extraterrestrial mice." The mere thought of unleashing Earth's apex predators on unsuspecting alien worlds caused several nearby xenobiology professors to faint on the spot. As preparations for the expanded program got underway, the Academy found itself transformed into a whirlwind of activity. New habitats were constructed to accommodate the diverse needs of incoming alien students. The cafeteria expanded its menu to include everything from liquid nitrogen smoothies to photosynthesis booths. The human students threw themselves into the preparations with gusto, their pets never far from their sides. Emily's ball python proved unexpectedly helpful in installing new piping, able to navigate tight spaces with ease. Fluffy the tarantula's web-spinning skills were put to use in creating ultra-strong, lightweight materials for the new alien habitats. Even Thumper found a niche, his incredible chewing power being harnessed to help break down and recycle tough alien waste materials. The sight of the fluffy white rabbit reducing a chunk of indestructible alien alloy to bits never failed to send nearby extraterrestrial observers into fits of existential crisis. As the day of the grand exchange drew near, excitement and trepidation filled the air in equal measure. The humans were busy packing, making sure they had all the essentials for their journeys to alien worlds: extra pet food, chew toys that wouldn't accidentally tear holes in the space-time continuum, and plenty of allergy medications for any aliens who might be sensitive to Earth dander. On the other side of the galaxy, alien families were preparing for their human guests with a mixture of curiosity and blind panic. The gelatinous blob family of Uza Prime reinforced their entire home with a non-stick coating, just in case the human brought one of those cat creatures that shed everywhere. The photosynthians of Chlorophyll IV stocked up on what they hoped was appropriate human food, filling their pantries with a variety of rocks and minerals that their research suggested humans enjoyed. Someone really needed to update the Galactic Wikipedia's entry on Earth cuisine. The night before the exchange was set to begin, Dean Xylophone called an emergency meeting with his staff. "Friends, colleagues, fellow sentient beings," he began, his tone somber. "Tomorrow we embark on a journey that will either usher in a new era of galactic understanding or plunge us into chaos the likes of which we've never seen." Professor Zilblax raised a pseudopod. "With all due respect, Dean, haven't we already been living in chaos since the humans arrived?" There was a murmur of agreement from the assembled faculty. Dean Xylophone's keys clinked in acknowledgement. "True, but tomorrow we spread that chaos to the far reaches of the galaxy. Our human students will be unleashed upon unsuspecting alien worlds and will be receiving a diverse group of extraterrestrial students in return. Is it too late to retire?" someone in the back squeaked. The Dean ignored the comment. "I know we've all had our challenges, with our human students and their companions. But I want you all to remember something important. Despite all the property damage, despite the nightmares, despite the fact that half of you have developed new phobias, these humans have also brought something unique to our academy. A constant state of terror, Professor Neutronium muttered. No, Dean Gilafone chimed firmly. They've brought life, excitement. A reminder that the universe is vast and wondrous and yes, sometimes terrifying. But isn't that why we're all here? To learn, to grow, to challenge our preconceptions. A thoughtful silence fell over the room. Besides, the dean added, a hint of mischief in his tone. Just think of how boring this place was before they arrived. As laughter filled the room, Dean Schlafone felt a surge of optimism. Yes, tomorrow would bring challenges. Yes, there would probably be property damage on a galactic scale. And yes, they'd probably be filling out incident reports for the next century. But it would also be the start of something incredible, a true intermingling of cultures, a chance for the galaxy to see humanity and their beloved pets for what they really were, a species of contradictions, capable of great love and terrifying ferocity, often in the same moment. As the meeting adjourned and the staff filed out, each lost in their own thoughts about the day to come, Dean Xylophone found himself humming a tune. It was an old Earth song he'd heard one of the human students playing. Something about letting the dogs out. Tomorrow, they wouldn't just be letting the dogs out. They'd be letting out the cats, the rabbits, the tarantulas, and who knew what else. And in return, they'd be welcoming beings from across the galaxy, each with their own unique perspectives and probably a few tentacles. It was going to be one hell of a semester. As dawn broke over the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts, casting a multi-hued light across its now heavily reinforced campus, Dean Xylophone stood at his office window. He watched as the first transport ships began to arrive, disgorging a menagerie of alien life forms onto the quad. At the same time, he could see the human students gathering, pets in tow, ready to embark on their own adventures across the stars. Sarah was trying to coax Mr. Snuggles into a cat carrier, the feline looking utterly unimpressed with the whole affair. Jake was barely controlling an excited Rex, who seemed to think the incoming spaceships were the biggest, most exciting fetch toys he'd ever seen. While Dean Xylophone chimed to himself, here goes nothing. He turned away from the window and headed down to greet the new arrivals, his steps creating a jaunty tune on the metal floors. As he walked, he couldn't help but smile, or at least the xylophone equivalent of a smile. After all, if there was one thing he'd learned from the humans, it was this: sometimes the most terrifying things in life are also the most rewarding. And who knew? Maybe by the end of this exchange, the sight of a dog wouldn't send half the galaxy into a panic. Then again, given the way Rex was currently trying to play with a newly arrived gaseous entity, leaving the poor being dispersed across half the quad, well, maybe that was a bit too much to hope for. But that, Dean Xylophone realized, was the beauty of it all. In a galaxy full of countless species, on countless worlds with countless ways of life, there was always something new to learn, something to be surprised by. And if that something happened to be a 180-pound Rottweiler with a penchant for chasing sentient gas clouds, or a fluffy white rabbit capable of chewing through starship hulls, well, that was just another day in the grand, chaotic, wonderful experiment that was galactic cooperation. As he stepped out into the crisp morning air, ready to welcome the first wave of alien exchange students, Dean Xylophone felt a surge of excitement. Yes, there would be challenges. Yes, there would be misunderstandings. And yes, the property insurance premiums for the entire sector would probably skyrocket. But there would also be friendship, understanding. And if the humans had anything to say about it, probably a lot of interstellar pet adoption agencies by the end of the year. Welcome, Dean Xylophone called out, his voice ringing clear across the quad, to the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts. Let the adventure begin. And with that, the great galactic pet exchange was officially underway. May the universe have mercy on them all.